That was a week ago, and things have gone downhill rapidly with the world. At first I thought Steve had fixed the problem. I had been amazed that the needle he jammed into me hadn't hurt. In fact, after all that worry, I hadn't felt a single thing he did to me. When I got home, I sat in frightened anticipation, waiting for the anesthetic to wear off. As distasteful as the numbness was, it was 1,000 times more preferable to the toothache. That wait had been a tense few hours, and I'd gone to bed that night finally reassured that I was over the worst of it. I suppose I should have known better. My life hasn't been particularly blessed at the best of times, so why should now be any different? Steve had in all fairness recommended I have the tooth removed, but from some madness that suddenly sprang into my mind, I'd told him I wanted to try and save it. That would need another visit, I had been told, and he had eagerly fiddled away in my gob for what turned out to be 30 minutes. The pain went away for a day or two, but then I got drunk. I suppose I felt the need to blow off steam. My memory is a little fuzzy, but I think I bit on something hard that night, maybe a piece of grit in the chips I'd ordered. Whatever I did, that next morning was hell. Not only was the tooth hurting again, but it was broken. It was also a Sunday. Now, not only are most dentists closed on a Sunday, that was also the morning I realized the zombie apocalypse had unleashed itself onto the streets. It had fermented quietly, slipping past the public's awareness, the tragedy in Thailand suddenly disappearing from the broadcast channels. The last thing I saw was that Bangkok was under martial law. It isn't anymore, because I'm guessing there's nobody left alive there now. It's clear to me that the government tried to hide the truth from us, but I know now I should have paid more attention. It's so easy to get wrapped up in the problems of life. And you can't really blame the government. They were doing everything they could to stop the country panicking. It didn't work. When the news finally broke that zombies were real, all hell broke loose. By Monday, the streets were on fire with the rioting, which really hampered efforts to get the contagion under control. Blackpool, where I live, escaped most of it for some reason. But the phones weren't working, so trying to call someone for help had been a fool's errand. In Agony again, I even drove to the practice in the vain hope that Steve was in there drilling away, but the doors had been locked and the window shutters were down. And now I'm trapped. I've been sitting here by my Juliet balcony for the last 2 days, watching as the undead rampage up and down the seafront. There is nothing left alive out there. Even the birds are moving in that jerking, uncoordinated fashion that is a clear mark of the zombie infestation. I think I'm safe for now, well, at least from the undead. It is, of course, just my luck that my toothache is mounting in intensity. It feels different now, more diffuse, not so localized. There's also a loose bit that my tongue insists on playing with. I'm in a bad way and I'm on my own. I would like to blame the dentist, but it really isn't his fault. I know that, as well as I think I know there's no way I'm getting out of this. I used to be a nurse, and there's no denying the danger I am in. All from a simple tooth. I live in a secure top-floor flat because of the ocean views it provides. It sounds more glamorous than it actually is, and I suspect I can only afford it due to the fact it's in one of this now dead country's dilapidated seaside towns. It's enough to keep me safe, with some of my neighbors at this height similarly blessed. Or should that be cursed? Is there any real blessing to be had in watching civilization be destroyed before your eyes? When the internet and social media rumors about the Lazarus virus had started, I barely noticed. The first indication given to me that the zombie nightmare was upon us was Steve complaining about his flight. Eventually I realized something was seriously wrong, my own ineptitude giving me just enough warning to fill my kitchen cupboards with food. I have about a month's worth, and I'm wondering if I'm going to even get to eat it. I could tell I arrived at the supermarket too late. By the time I got there, half the shelves were already cleared, with people piling whatever they could into the trolleys, which they struggled to navigate around the store rammed with desperate people. I had to wrestle for some of it. Tempers were frayed, people panicking. Try doing that when your jaw is throbbing. Try doing that when you fear your credit card might be declined. It wasn't, which was a small blessing in the madness. At least I'll never have to worry about paying that off. I'm not sure the undead are too bothered continuing to enforce the nation's credit rating system. What I couldn't understand is why the supermarket staff carried on working. Maybe it was people in denial just going through the motions, but it really made no sense to me. I have survived Lazarus for now, but this tooth is getting worse. Just sitting here, it seems to intensify, owning me entirely. Even the threat of being eaten alive doesn't distract me from the torment. I've even contemplated getting the pliers on it, but I just know I'd end up shattering it, which would leave me in an even worse predicament. The salt mouthwash doesn't help, nor did the painkillers which I've now run out of. I'm resorting to alcohol to try and drown out the growing anguish. It comes in waves. The underside of my jaw is hot and throbbing, my face visibly swelling. Each glass of wine seems more difficult to get down, and even though the night isn't warm, I'm burning up. I can't put the heat coursing through my flesh down to anything other than this tooth. I have an infection, a bad one. Shit, I might be better just throwing myself out of the window and letting the undead have me. It might be a blessing. Stepping away from the balcony, I once again make the trip to the bathroom, on somewhat shakier legs than before, to look at myself in the mirror. There's no denying the change that has occurred in such an apparently short time. The swelling is bigger, encroaching now onto the left side of my neck, the skin there visibly red. My tongue feels too big as well, as if it is filling my entire mouth. I am in dire need of medical care. Even the dentist can't fix this. If I could turn up at the nearest hospital, they would admit me and pump me full of IV antibiotics and fluids, but there isn't a hope in hell of getting that help. I've saved myself from the zombies only for my own body to rebel against me. How can that be considered fair? Fair? Are you kidding? The whole world is on fire. Fairness no longer exists. This is nature doing what it can to remove humanity from the planet. Staggering from the bathroom, I make my way to the less than pristine kitchen. I've never been one for keeping my living space clean, and none of that even matters anymore. It's all about survival now, civilization's enforced norms having evaporated as soon as the first zombie lifted itself up from the slab. Will I survive? I don't think I will. I've never felt like this before, the yawning chasm of reality opening up in front of me. If I don't do something, there is a very real risk I'm not going to make it through the night. My medical knowledge isn't helping me here. It's just making me more and more frantic. I've probably overdosed on the last of the painkillers, which is ridiculous because they didn't seem to be doing anything. I just carried on taking them in the blessed hope that there might be some reduction in the pain. I'm losing a grip on the last thread of control I have left, and it doesn't help that I feel so weak. My skin now so hot to touch. I ram the glass under the tap and half fill it with water. My body desperately needs the fluids. The wine is no doubt a mistake, but a remedy I really had no choice but to try. The eruption from my lungs sends me to the floor hard, half the water dribbling out of my mouth, the rest searing down my windpipe. I can't swallow. Shit, that's a death sentence. The glass shatters as I drop it, the pieces scattering across the tiled floor. Dangerous obstacles for my bare feet. Not being able to swallow puts me into the category of a definite medical emergency. But there is nothing I can do here to address that. There will be no ambulances coming to rescue me. Not now. Not ever. For a second, my vision winks out. Would that be so bad to pass out now? At least it will spare me what's coming, a final mercy for someone who hasn't earned it. I'm suffering and I don't understand why life has deemed me worthy of this. My present state might actually be worse than catching Lazarus. I saw what the virus does to people on one of the last TV broadcasts. Watch out for the signs, we were told. The black rash and fever, the crippling pain in the joints and the lungs that rapidly fill with fluid, the mind-splitting headache and a descent into death that can take between hours and days. Of course, as the horde on the street below aptly demonstrates, death isn't the end. When the heart stops beating, resurrection ensues, creating a creature with an insatiable need for the sweet meat of human flesh. My lungs are on fire, demanding I supply them with air, but my windpipe has spasmed. I try and force myself to inhale, a weak trickle of oxygen breaking through the barrier. The blackness comes again, my vision shrinking down. Shifting my weight on the floor, my hip bruised but ignored from the fall, I barely notice as my left hand lands on what has to be the sharpest piece of glass ever conceived. I try and make some sound, any sound, but the air just doesn't want to move. It feels like my whole throat has closed up, and I begin to frantically claw at my neck. Again, the air won't go in. Dizziness and desperation come at me in equal measure. The thought strikes me like a sledgehammer. You're screwed, mate. To think one could die from toothache. To also think there will be people in the apartments along this part of the seafront who will shortly be starving, and I am going to die with my cupboards full. I have to breathe. I refuse to go out like this. Despite how terrifying the prospect is, I know what I need to do, and I have less than a minute to do it. Somehow I manage to pull my way back onto my feet, the glass shard being forced deeper. I don't care about that, or about the blood I've smeared all over the bloody kitchen cabinets. I force another trickle of air in, not enough to make a difference. Directly in front of me lies the surprisingly clean sink, the cutlery drawer to my right. With spots forming before me, another thin intake of life-giving breath is all I can manage. I rip the drawer open, almost setting it free of its captivity. The expected small knife is there, laser sharpened, easily capable of cutting through flesh. Can I really do this? I told you I used to be a nurse, right? Although it has been years, I have seen and helped out on numerous tracheotomies in my previous inglorious career. Memories comes back to me now through the haze of my dying body. There's no time or facility to embark on an aseptic technique, and using a small vanity mirror that is resting on the breakfast island close to me, I bring the knife up to my neck. But what to put in the hole once it is made? Quick, I have to think. Slamming the knife down, precious seconds wasted, I grab a pen that lies within temptation's grasp. It falls to pieces easily enough. Its poor construction perhaps designed for this emergency scenario. This is what I'll place in the hole once it is cut. Even with the purgatory I'm now in, the slice is a sharpness that takes center stage in my brain and almost finishes me. I do it in one deep incision. With shaking hands and a will to survive that has abandoned many in the days previous, I cut deep through the skin and cartilage, the hole opening up, my mewing cries proof that I am still alive. The knife with its razor-sharp edge slips fully through, and I abandon it for the body of the pen. It enters through the wetness, forced into the severed flesh. I suck in air greedily, never before experiencing such relief. My mind was probably seconds from blacking out. The smothering blackness relents and my eyes clear. With my ability to breathe restored, I collapse back down to the floor, barely noticing the puncture on my leg as it pushes aside one of the larger pieces of shattered glass. I've given myself a temporary respite at best, and I know that my consciousness is still going to leave me. With my body no longer needing the flood of adrenaline that it has been pumping out despite my lungs now being able to fulfill the body's oxygen demands, I finally pass out. When my eyes open again, the words in my head jumbled. Confused. I'm confused. I don't understand who I am, and a flash of memory tells me that my name is Clive. And then it's gone. The pain in my tooth has gone. the warning messages no longer needed. It takes me a moment to realize I'm no longer breathing. The word escaped me there. What are words anyway? Who am I? Must stand. Hungry, so hungry. I know the meaning of that, my mouth filling with wetness as the thought of food consumes me. Flesh, must have. Pain. So much pain. Not from tooth, but from being. The hunger is me, I know nothing else. I step up to the balcony and feel my kind. I can't see them, eyes not work. Feel them, smell them, can smell food, too. I yearn for it, need it, want it, must eat. Am I dead? I am dead. I don't care. All that matters is quenching the fire that is raging in my guts, must put out the fire. I hurl myself from the window to join my kind below. There are no more thoughts after that.